Paltrocast. Ivar, I've got so many things to ask you, but the first thing is, what do I call you? Ivar, Little Ozzy, Dylan. What do you like to be called these days?
Uh, Either Dylan is my real name, or you could call me Ivar the Micro, whichever one.
The
I go
reason
by
I
both names.
mention the reason I mention the names is not to be one of those idiots who calls the wrestler by their real name to show that they know more. It's just
Yeah,
that you're this very talented guy who
thank you.
sings. That Disturbed cover that I've seen you do with Three and a Half Men, fantastic. Your Master of Puppets cover, I like it at all. So, was the
Thank you.
plan all along to have this multifaceted career?
Well, I kind of fell in love with singing later in my life. I was always a wrestling fan. I was always an announcer. So I used to, when my sister, I'll tell you this backstory. When my sister and I were little, we had opened our gifts at Christmas time. And then I got a karaoke machine that recorded with cassette and everything else. And my sister got all these new clothes and she was modeling her clothes. She was only 7 years old. She was coming out, doing this, and I was saying, now introducing, Lexi. And I would say my sister's name and introduce her coming out. And that started from a very young age. I was always an entertainer, always the class clown.
Mhm.
And I've always loved wrestling. But the music happened later. It was 21 years old. I didn't know I had that other side of my voice, that heavy rock side. And I just love being on stage. I just love having that audience in the palm of your hands and like where you could just do whatever, entertain them, and they go with you. If you have enough confidence and you're all in, they follow with you, and it's awesome. It's awesome.
Sure. Now, being a lifelong wrestling fan myself, the first announcer I really remember was Howard Finkel. Do you remember the first one that you were drawn to?
Mine was Tony Schiavone because I was a WCW guy. So Sting was my end all be all, and I got to meet Sting actually a couple of years ago. And as much as I talk, I was starstruck, and I didn't talk at all when when I met Sting. He's the man, and he's coming to the end of his career. And it's kind of tugging at the heartstrings a little bit watching him out there.
There's a big rock and wrestling connection, and you're clearly part of that. Are you associated with any other people from the rock and wrestling thing? Because, of course, there's Frankie Kazarian,
Uh,
Chris Jericho. There's so
yeah.
many people who have that band, whether or not they want to be known as a rock and wrestling guy.
So guys like I idolize guys like Chris Jericho because he kind of broke the mold and made it okay to be an entertainer as well. I mean, he could do all the athleticism. He's a great wrestler. But if they didn't have those side acts in there in wrestling, those other like having Saliva come out at WrestleMania and play, have play their songs, having Motorhead play Triple H down in the ring. If they didn't have that mixture of those entertainers come in, there would
Mhm.
not be a spot for guys like me. And I don't, I had to make my own spot. There wasn't really a full spot in the wrestling organization for somebody that could just run around and entertain like that.
Mhm.
And I had to make my own spot and became the voice of Micro. But it was a hard road, and those guys like Chris Jericho really are what paved that.
Was there any hesitance for you to be part of a reality show? Because some people just don't like having the cameras around, and I get the vibe that you don't mind the cameras.
I don't mind the cameras. I mean, we're in that all the time. And my job with micro wrestling, like all those TikToks and everything that you see on Instagram, and the way that we got to this point was through our videos and our media. And we have guys that can really go out there and have 5-star matches. We have guys that could do all these crazy flips off the top. Everybody has their niche and their role. And I knew that my role was I'm a good talker. So that's my role with micro is to put these guys up and to hype them up. And that's kind of what I do. And I've been in the camera for 3 years now doing it. So it's kind of like a second nature to me. And I just feel comfortable behind the camera. I don't know why,
That's
but
yeah.
it was a fear like revealing the curtain and stuff and everybody's life. And there was that fear like, okay, looking at my wife and we're talking and I'm like, well, after this, there's there's no privacy at all. So be ready. And there's just like that reality of you got to mentally get ready for what's about to take place. But I've been ready for this my whole life. So I'm excited.
If I can throw you a compliment, the announcer or the backstage interviewer really makes people who are not interesting seem very interesting, which
Yeah.
means you could be an interviewer, you could be a podcast host, a talk show host. Is that something you eventually see yourself doing?
Well, I did that briefly. I had in college, I had my own radio station. I had my own podcast. I did that
Wow.
for over a year. I've announced volleyball, baseball, women's basketball, hockey, football. So I've kind of done every sport that there is. And actually, I've talked to my boss, and we have a micro wrestling app, which I encourage everybody to install. With that app, we have new shows and sitcoms coming out that we're trying to work on. Just tiny little things, little ventures that we're working on. And one of them is an insider. I would like to do a micro wrestling insider because we do 550 shows a year, but we get the common question on, well, when are you coming to my state? When are you coming here? And this will kind of elaborate every week, on when we're going to be where. That's also more work for me, but I'm kind of excited because that's what I like to do. I like to talk and hype people up.
That sounds also like the WCW 900 hotline with.
Yep.
So you're going to create some rumors about backstage stuff so that they.
I called into that when I was a kid. I was a part of that.
Wow. So, I mean, what I've learned is that music is a passion, that announcing is a passion, wrestling is a passion. So basically, you found a way to do your hobbies for a living.
Yes, because at the time I was working for Harley Race at World League Wrestling. I had called him repeatedly, telling him, "Hey, I don't really have any experience with calling matches. I'm very hungry though to get into this. I've idolized and studied this. I mean, you're not going to find somebody that knows more about this stuff. I'm like very into it." And I left him voicemail after voicemail after voicemail. He finally called me back because it was right place, right time. He was going to be on my Zoo TV on Saturdays in the 6 o'clock hour. After Mizzou football was over with, it was going to be World League Wrestling at night. And it was an hour time slot. I got to call Scott Steiner, Ryback, Nick Aldis, Matt Seidel, Adam Cole. So I got to really call a bunch of the big stars that I idolized. And that got my foot in the door. And I had, like I said, I had no experience calling it. I was just going to go in there and do it. And it was rough the first 15 minutes on the pre-show. I remember the first night I called matches was rough at the beginning. And then once we got through the pre-show and into the matches, we were off. And it was like it was like a second nature. It was like a home, for me, because I just love announcing and I love wrestling. So I don't know.
Yeah. And when Harley says that you're the man, that means you're the man and everyone has to hire you. So
I cried. He told me one night, it was the second week after I did all the match calling in the studio, and I was running sound and lights for his live shows on Saturday. And I went into the studio. I went into the Harley Race Arena at Moscow Mills, Missouri. And when I went in there, he shook my hand and said, "I seen your telecast last week. Good job." And I was like, from Harley Race, it was awesome, and that made me even more hungry. So,
well, two quick questions, and then I'll let you go because a lot of people want to speak to Ivar today. The first one is, who do you think are the top 2 or 3 talents in the federation that we should really be paying attention to? Not to play favorites, but who are the immediate stars in your opinion?
Rising stars are the guys that are popular right now.
I'll take the rising stars because they're not getting any plugs right now.
Yeah. So the rising stars that I can tell you about that I see great potential in. I mean, we have so many set in stone stars, guys that have been here for 5-7 years that are now at their peak, and doing their best work. But as far as rising stars, Zach Presley, that's Elvis's unclaimed child. I always say his dad never paid a cent to child support, but he turned out okay. I say that he's awesome. He's just great. He can wrestle. He can talk. This man is just like me to the point where he had recordings and idolized Elvis Presley his whole life. And he's an ex-coal miner worker. He used to be in the coal mines at 4'7". The guy's forearms are like big, And when he goes out there, he plays Elvis so perfect. It's like he was born to do it. And the other guy is, I guess that's our babyface rising star. The heel rising star that I can tell you about is Micro Suave. The guy just has an edge to him. He's very athletic. He's hungry. He's got the talking ability, and he's just getting more comfortable every week. And as an announcer, when I see the progression, that's my favorite thing about this company is watching them start here and end here where they just own it when they go out there. It's awesome. So
Okay, there's exciting stuff happening. And then the last question goes at you, the human being. What's the last concert that you saw for fun?
Well, I can't remember the last one I see because I've seen a bunch of concerts and it's been a long time. But the next one I have actually is Disturbed, Falling in Reverse, and Plush. And that's coming up in about a month. I'm a big fan of alternative rock. If I had to compare my voice to somebody, it'd be Disturbed. I actually tried out for The Voice and made it to the second round when I did Sound of Silence by Disturbed. So that's kind of my niche.
Hard song to sing, especially the way David does it. But Fallen in Reverse, another rock and wrestling band right there, because Ronnie is with somebody in wrestling. But the bottom line is, I'm looking forward to what's to come from you in a lot of levels. Congrats on the show, and looking forward to seeing your journey on camera. You've got an amazing story, man.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to everybody listening. Thank you, sir, for having me on the show. And from everybody here that loves Ivar and supports me, from the tiniest rock star on the planet, the voice of micro wrestling, nothing's impossible.
Paltrocast.